When we first met, we were talking about you know, getting kicked off of Twitter and getting censored and all that. And my initial response to you was that there are some promising looking applications that are decentralized social media alternatives. And I kind of asked, why do you think they're not getting off the ground yet? And your response to me was, that's all bullshit. Those don't matter. They're useless and meaningless, and they don't get to the root of the issue. So before we get to the root of the issue, I'd like to hear both from a technological standpoint and from more of like a philosophical standpoint, why those don't really, why they're non-solutions.
Sure. So first of all, for something to be meaningfully decentralized, there needs to be incentive for people to operate the nodes themselves, because, you know, something that is decentralized means that it has multiple nodes, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, in a society, multiple nodes means, like, I don't know, multiple cities or multiple locations or multiple humans or multiple cultures, right? So a node can be, you know, is a metaphysical description of a thing within a network, right? So if we think about these decentralized social media applications, like, the idea there is that we're all running our own fucking servers that somehow store all the data for, you know, whatever. Now, what's the incentive? I mean, what, like a token that's going to, you know, run its own thing? Then the problem with that is that token fundamentally becomes money, because any token that has a monetary value attached to it is trying to function as some sort of money. It becomes a tradable good that is traded on these networks, etc., which means it's competing against Bitcoin. Now, what's a bigger problem to solve? The fact that money should not be controlled by anyone, or someone's version of a YouTube, right? Well, money trumps that fucking million times over, which means it's not going to compete with it, which means over time that token is going to lose fucking value. The incentive model will not sustain somebody, and particularly millions of people, for it to be meaningfully decentralized, for it to be meaningfully censorship resistant. It won't sustain itself enough so that it can remain that way. So what will happen is all of these networks that are supposedly decentralized, if you actually look under the hood, most of them are run by the initial foundation that launched the token, and maybe a couple other token people that you know, want to bootstrap the network, right? What you end up with is not only something that is not meaningfully decentralized enough to be censorship resistant, but you end up with something that is slower than a YouTube, or than a, you know, I don't know, whatever other, I mean, if there is even another streaming platform these days, there really isn't, you know, Vimeo, right? But you get a worse customer experience. It's slower. It doesn't work as well. It's not as functional, with none of the real benefit of censorship resistant that the decentralization element is supposed to be giving, right? Like, Bitcoin is borderline censorship resistant, and it's got hundreds of thousands of fucking node operators. These things are like 5 or 10. Like, it's not censorship resistant, but it's the furthest thing from it. So you end up getting the worst of both worlds. So from a technological perspective, it's a fucking moot point. Like, it's not going to happen. There is no fundamental underlying incentive for you to be a miner, nor just a node operator or any of that sort of stuff. But in Bitcoin, there is. It's baked into it. Like, you hold some fucking Bitcoin, and the more node operators there are, the miners have an explicit incentive, but even a node operator has an incentive, which is maybe not as money-like, you know, the miners get the block reward. As a node operator, you get benefits of, like, privacy, of ownership, of, you know, sovereignty, and all that sort of stuff, which, you know, are not as direct. They're kind of more indirect benefits. But I mean, you can run a Bitcoin node for $50.
Right.
You know, to run a node for something like this, which is a decentralized social media platform, you're going to need to spend thousands of dollars on server infrastructure, and enough to, like, actually substantiate that. For what? Like, you're not getting the payback for it. So it's uneconomically feasible, and as a result, it'll always trend towards centralization again, which is where, you know, things like Bitcoin Cash and all this sort of stuff that tried to place data ahead of censorship resistance, for example, they've all ended up on the same fucking path. Like, they're all expensive versions of PayPal, or they're all substandard versions of YouTube, Twitter, or Facebook.
So I'd like to make sure that I understand with a recap and an analogy. So recap,
Sure.
you've got two things that operate as money, but they're solving different problems. Bitcoin solves the biggest, best problem, and some of these other ones are solving tiny problems when you consider the relative to each other. Therefore, because they're competing, Bitcoin will beat them. Therefore, it's really not from that standpoint useful to try and perpetuate a token as long as you can. And then the analogy that from what I would understand from like an economic perspective, I hear about gold backed cryptocurrencies a lot. And my typical response to that is, well, is the gold the money or is the cryptocurrency the money? Because if the gold is the money, why do you need the cryptocurrency layer on top of it? All you're doing is adding a public ledger to the ownership of something that's completely untraceable. You've got a rock in your hand. If the cryptocurrency is the money, well, why do you have the physical rock attached to it? Because now you have all of the problems of both, like you have to physically transport the gold for the payment to actually happen, but you don't get, you like you said, you get the biggest problems of both and no advantages. It's slower and and more expensive and all of that. Is that a similar analogy just applied to technology?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. And it's funny that you even mentioned this, because it's like in my early days of like sort of coming across Bitcoin and stuff like that, and I saw these original gold-backed tokens, and that was one of the things that actually started making me a Bitcoin maximalist. Was like I was looking at all this dumb shit, and I was like, what exactly what you just said then? I was like, why are people attaching a cryptographic token to a fucking piece of gold? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like you which one is the money?
Yeah.
What's the ledger? What are you fucking doing? And it just that was honestly part of like what led me down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and made me actually look at these things more objectively and with a lot more scrutiny. I was just like, no, this is a complete load of malarkey. It's like it's really, really stupid. And then all these guys that are launching their own tokens, I mean, there is nothing of value that has been built in the entire crypto space other than mechanisms for wild speculation. Like literally zero. Like even art is becoming a deranged form of low quality JPEG horseshit that people are passing off as the new wave of art, in the form of NFTs. Literally none of these platforms, none of these things have done anything other than sell pie in the sky narratives in order to issue their own money, which is the greatest business of all. Like, I mean, dude, if I could issue my own money, and this is the thing, it's like an ethics thing. Like I probably, some days I wake up and, it's a hard day at like doing stuff with capital raising or something honest with Amber, right? And then I turn around and I say, fuck me, man, there's people out there who just literally raised $20 million overnight for a pie in the sky dumbass idea of a token, and they have no accountability, no nothing, no, like it's literally just they got money for free.
Yeah.
And for me, it's like, I mean, there's no better business model than just printing money. Like it's the ultimate business model,
Right.
In a fraudulent world.
Sure.
And that's what all these cryptos effectively are. They take the narrative of Bitcoin, they then sprinkle it with a few other things, and then they sell their own money to basically idiots who are jumping from the fry pan, which is fiat money today, into the fire, which is digital panopticon type money run by nerds who think that it's a good idea that we should scan our irises in order to be part of an equal financial system, like the idiots who did you see that
the world
did you see the
coin?
world coin? Yeah.
Yeah.